We're all familiar with the idea of happily ever after, but the truth is, happily ever after doesn't just come without a few bumps in the road. And I say a few, obviously jokingly. Life is filled with plenty of ups and downs. And of course, there are days when everyone wants to tune out and wait for the storm to pass. But when that type of coping mechanism turns into weeks and months, that could signal something bigger is actually going on, like emotional neglect in your relationship or marriage. Now, what is emotional neglect? Well, if you ask 100 people, you're probably going to get 100 different responses. This is, I thought, a decent definition of emotional neglect. It's marked by a distinct lack of action by one person in a relationship, and it's often difficult to identify. Hallmarks of emotional neglect in a relationship or a marriage are a lack of emotional support and failing to meet your partner's needs. Now, this could look like anything from you feel like you're alone in your relationship, your partner prefers to spend time alone versus with you, your partner shuts down when you want to talk, you're not sure what exactly your partner wants from you, you don't necessarily engage in social activities together or as a couple. Your go-to person is a friend, a neighbor, a relative instead of your partner. You consistently ignore and suppress your feelings. You don't feel comfortable around your friends and family. You procrastinate on long-term decisions and you hesitate to move forward with things like having kids, buying a home, or even the smaller decisions. You don't feel like you can be yourself when are around your partner. And that's a big one right there. You got to take your temperature, your own body's temperature. And man, if you are not comfortable around certain people, some boundaries have to be put up. I'm talking about outside your spouse and not to say that you can't have boundaries inside your relationship, but if you're with the person and you're going to continue to be with the person, those set of boundaries look a lot different from somebody who's, a friend, a neighbor, whatsoever. Um, Emotional neglect could be you simply don't trust your partner, or there's a lack of physical intimacy. So you're feeling a bit neglected by your partner. This isn't an unusual thing to experience, especially if you're a parent, because kids certainly change a lot about your life and your relationship. However, there's a million reasons why neglect creeps up, even if you don't have kids. But regardless of the reason, if you still need a little more from your significant other, that could certainly be something hard that's difficult to admit. Having needs makes it seem like you're needy. Nobody ever wants to come across as needy. To have needs may go against the ingrained idea that you should always be the one to solve problems, not the ones who create them. But expressing your needs is not being needy. In fact, it's part of being in a relationship, a healthy one at that, where you ask for stuff and where the other person gives you what you might be missing, and of course, vice versa. Still, vulnerability is difficult, especially your partner is also very busy with needs of their own. Maybe you've never had to ask for attention before because attention was always given to you before kids, before COVID, before infidelity, before life's demands, before volunteering, before this and that. And you just don't have those muscles right now, dropping hints of what you think might be better um, uh, maybe used to help, but they don't help anymore, or they just don't work anymore. The initial challenge then is working up the guts to say how you feel. And the first step is to acknowledge that what you're feeling is not nothing. So there is something there. You're lonely for a good reason. You were the center of attention at one point, and you want to feel that way again. Again, this is not if somebody is independently, astronomically needy, that no matter how much you shovel in, they're just not fulfilled. This is when, at one point you felt there was emotional investment and now there's some emotional neglect. The next step is thinking about what happens when you stay silent. The short answer is nothing good. You become resentful, you start looking for attention elsewhere, or you fold further inward. None of the above, which are healthy. And certainly they're not places that you want to go, especially in a relationship. So you have ample motivation, but telling your partner your feelings could definitely be tricky. There are plenty of ways to broach the topic. Some are good, some maybe not so good, but some may actually make you feel like they're only going to serve worse. But I did want to give you a couple of ways to broach this topic with your significant other. Number one, what's been different? So before saying anything to your partner, first ask this to yourself. Something is off, but it helps to figure out exactly what is off. It could be getting slammed at work for either one of you, an upcoming family visit, or that you've had a babysitter since pre-pandemic, and now you don't, obviously, because of the pandemic. When you consider your partner's perspective, you naturally pause, you become more reflective, and you can come into the conversation with both empathy and details, rather than what we put in our own mind, which is oftentimes incorrect. And that's, of course, necessary. When you name it, and this is even with healing, when you name it, you can address it. This is why I tell people all the time when they say, I'm angry. Well, hold on a minute. That's way broad. Name what you're feeling. But I digress. I have something to talk about. Can we find a good time? That's usually, there's usually never a great time. But often issues do get raised at night, which is really the worst time. You're both tapped out mentally and physically, and it's easy for your request to sound like yet another demand to their already overloaded schedule. And by saying the above, you're requesting time and giving a heads up to an important conversation so your partner can go in prepared. A natural question could be, what's this about, or what have you. You don't necessarily have to answer that unless, of course, you want to have a train wreck right then and there, because I don't think neither of you are in a mental space or have the mental wherewithal capacity to have that relationship, that conversation right then and there. And even if you are, they aren't. And what's going to happen is their defense mechanisms are just going to kick up. And then that kind of that kind of derails the conversation. You can say, it's nothing bad, but it's just something that you do want to talk about. Or if it fits, you can say, how you always want me to be more open. That's what this is about. But I want to find the best time for us. You know how best your partner receives this statement, so modify it as needed. If your partner really does not like, we need to talk, because that kind of puts everybody's porcupine quills up. Say something else. Say, hey, I want to run something by you. When would be a good time later on tonight? Perfect. 3, I noticed that we haven't been together as much. Have you? It's more of an observation, this tactic. It's not an attack or an implication that your spouse is coming up short in any way. You can pepper in any pattern you discovered with. It could be anything like, it seems like when your family comes, things get focused on that, or whatever particular gripe you have, or whatever you believe your partner gets distracted with. And then you can follow it up with, do you think that's true? Do you think that observation is accurate? That way you're inviting them to the conversation table. And you can tag it with, can we find time for us? Again, that's why it's more of an invitation rather than a request, which seems like it could be just adding to the already long to-do list. This way, you're also leading with curiosity, which tamps down any bite at all, giving more chances that your partner will share and want to find a solution rather than be defensive. This is one of those ways that help couples attack issues rather than attacking one another. Number 4, I know it might sound like extra pressure, and that's not my intent. Whatever you say before or after, you want to you really want to say these lines. Any implication that you're being left out will feel like extra pressure. You don't want it to come across as another thing to put on your partner's to-do list, or to show your understanding. You want to show your understanding by adding in anything along the lines of, I know you're exhausted and depleted, but also know that requests for attention can go through a filter and be heard like wanting sex, and that might not be anywhere on your partner's list. So again, just kind of giving your partner that, listen, I know we have a lot on our plate. I know we're dealing with a lot. I know you have a big project coming up at work. You're kind of just like injecting a little bit of empathy in them before going in with your gentle request. Be sure to stress that it's about finding time together. It's not an accusation. You're not finger pointing. You're not whatever. You're coming together as a couple to address an issue in your relationship. and help your partner understand that you care about the relationship and that you want better for both of you. Number five, you can say something along the lines of, once the conversation starts, I've been feeling a little neglected lately. There's nothing wrong with your direct approach to take the guesswork out if that's the dynamic of your marriage, of your relationship. Some couples are just much prefer being direct with one another. The key elements are tone and volume. Common loving for both, which keep things away from bluntness, is probably preferable. And it could also help to throw in something along the lines of, things have been feeling a little off here. And that way, you're putting out there the concern, but it's almost like you're almost inviting a brainstorming session. With any of the above, you can mix and match, obviously. You just want to remember that you are never laying everything at your partner's feet. And whatever words you choose, a good last line is, I miss you. And when you say you miss somebody, that's letting them know that you're not nagging. You're not coming from a place of a criticism. You're coming from a place of, you want better, like I said, overall for the relationship. So I miss us. I miss you. That sentiment says that your intent is to reconnect. And when it's heard, it's easier for them to say, I miss you too. And both of you are really inviting opportunities for change to occur. However you choose to approach the situation, do so knowing that your feelings are valid and they should be expressed. But also note that the time and place that you express them are important. Not to mention the tone, like I said, and volume and things like that. Chances are your partner is stressed and exhausted, as we all are with many things nowadays. And hell, they might even be feeling neglected, which actually is a good thing that you brought this up, because it could be a good conversation for the both of you. So get creative with how to approach your partner, and also get creative with ways to offer and receive more emotional support. Examine the underlying causes for the behavior. Be proactive, talk about it constructively, make arrangements to spend quality time together, even if that means getting creative with, hey, let's, whatever. I mean, some couples are like, hey, you know what, non-negotiable, every Thursday of the month, let's get a babysitter for the kids. Or every other Monday, let's leave work and meet each other for lunch, no matter what. I mean, it's just kind of getting creative and making each other feel important to invest in that emotional support. All else fails, seek professional help. And last but not least, be patient. These things take time. And for people that are like me, where patience is not your virtue, this could be actually one of the toughest roads to walk on. So once you begin the conversation, it's easier to listen to concerns about what could be done. And, always remember, if you want to live comfortably, you have to sometimes get uncomfortable. So having these conversations are not going to be comfortable necessarily, but if you want to live comfortably, you got to temporarily allow yourself some discomfort.